All right. In fantasy football, everybody has their own leagues and their hometown leagues, and I'm not any different. And while not everybody in our league is from the same town, our commissioner was able to bring together a great group of 14 guys. It's evolved over the years, and it's now called the Grand League. It was the small league, the big league, the big league, the big league, and now it's the Grand League because this was our first year doing Dynasty. So I'm the Kodiak, and today I'm joined by Eryk and Yoav, who are on my side, and they're two other members of the Grand League. And we're here today to break down our Dynasty startup that happened on, I think, May 25th of 2020, and talk about the first round. So before we talk about the picks, we will talk about some trades that were made.
Yeah, in this league, 14 teams, pretty big league. And we also did allow the pre-draft trading. Two of the biggest trades in the first round were actually from Alex himself. And the first one I think happened on the night we launched the league.
It did.
Then this was back when we were using ESPN before Sleeper. Alex initially had the 102, and he was able to flip that to PK, who's one of our other league members, for the 109 and the 309. And this was the first of what we like to call trade rapes. We get that from the league, the television show. And yeah, the 102, you're thinking that's got to be Saquon, but you get another first round pick and a third round pick out of that. I mean, Alex, what were you thinking when you were able to make that trade?
I was thinking depth is king.
Turned out to be the case. One of the biggest things that many of us in the Grand League lack is depth. I suffered from it myself. After we drafted, I had a Fab Five to build around. At the time, I had Saquon Barkley, Miles Sanders, DK Metcalf, Chris Godwin, and AJ Brown. My biggest regret, I loved my draft. My biggest regret was not having more depth. I went about 2 rounds, I think, without a pick. I wish I could have had another 5th round pick, or else I probably would have gone another receiver or something. But that's what I liked at the beginning until later on when I've been made more trades, and now I have a Fab Five. So if I could back and change one thing, it'd be 4th or 5th round pick.
Yeah, I was gonna say pre-draft, Yoav Rachelson had without a doubt the best draft. He traded down, I think, 3 spots in the first round twice and got multiple second round picks in the process.
So, yeah, Yoav, you had that depth, but
I did.
I think you and I both fell victim to trading up sort of at the last second.
Well, I don't. When I traded I had 2 first round picks. I traded for the second pick of the draft, obviously, where I took Saquon Barkley. And I traded for the 13th pick of the draft. For that, I traded the 22nd and 21st overall for the 13th and 28th overall. And, I mean, if you look at that, the value between 13 and 21 the difference in value there is much greater than the difference in value is from 22 to 28. So that trade worked out very well for me.
Yeah, I was gonna say you got the guy that you were gonna get at 21 or 22 anyway, so not a big deal.
I did. He fell out of. I did consider him at 13, Miles Sanders, and he fell into my hands out of heaven at the 20th pick.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about Grand League is none of us in here are fantasy experts. Some people know more about fantasy football than others.
Big time.
And obviously this draft happened months ago back in May. So we weren't all set on the Miles Sanders hype train. Obviously now, especially in Dynasty, he'd have to be considered a top 8 pick, top 10 pick at the worst.
He's a first round pick, no doubt.
And he fell to the very end of that second round. So huge steals happened throughout this draft. And as we go down and break the first round down pick by pick, you'll see some honestly mind-boggling picks.
Yep. So a little info about the Grand League. It's 14 teams. PPR and pre-draft trading was obviously allowed. So let's get into it. So the 101 was Christian McCaffrey, the man who had a record-breaking year last year. Half his games, he went over 30 points in PPR. Absolute stud. No durability concerns. Overpowered in PPR, and he's going to be 24 this year, and yeah, Christian McCaffrey at the 101 is the right pick, but I wouldn't necessarily need a huge piece to move down a few picks from a 101 and a QB startup because I think Saquon and CMC are interchangeable at 1A and 1B.
Yeah, and obviously Andrew, who had the 101, he's the commish, and he also had the luck of being the benefactor of that CMC season last year. Probably the best fantasy season of all time, especially in PPR formats. And I mean, he knew he wanted CMC. He made it very clear, never traded that pick, never even put that pick on the trade block. I think he said something absurd where I had the 5th and 6th overall pick. He said he wasn't giving up 101 for 105 and 106. Not that it was offered, but still a crazy thing to think about.
So with the second pick of the draft, I took Saquon Barkley, and he and Christian McCaffrey, who was obviously the 101, I said, are extremely comparable for Dynasty. They're both just complete young studs, and Saquon Barkley certainly has an argument for 101, but he's not quite to McCaffrey's level. I mean, McCaffrey did it all perfectly. He had an all-time great fantasy season. I think he had like 470 points or something. He led the NFL points, and it wasn't even close. And then with Saquon Barkley, he missed a few games last season. I don't think the Giants minded it that much, just because they knew they stunk. Everyone knew it. They knew it. They're not dumb. But I mean, Barkley does a lot of what McCaffrey can do. McCaffrey can do most of it better. Barkley is not many guys come into the league like him. Barkley is a terrific pass catcher. He finished last season as RB for the season. What did he finish last year?
I don't know. It wasn't that great because he was hurt.
Yeah, he had that high ankle sprain, which obviously you saw with Alvin Kamara too. Like it's not a long-term injury that you have to be too concerned about, but in terms of the course of a season, definitely limits fantasy production. I mean, Alvin Kamara went from the most elusive running back in football to looking like a complete scrub, scoring less than 10 fantasy points in some games that he was active and getting the carries, getting the workload he needed. So with Saquon suffering that same injury and still producing at a pretty high level, he was still an RB1. Yeah. But a healthy year for Saquon, I don't see how he's not the RB2 or even the RB1 if McCaffrey doesn't put up those numbers.
Yeah, and like I just took a look at this real quick. Saquon Barkley finished as the RB10, so still an RB1, and I'm pretty sure he was a league winner. I'm pretty sure in the playoffs he went off, and
yeah, he was a playoff league winner.
In 2018, he was the RB1. So yeah. CMC, Saquon, basically interchangeable. CMC maybe a little higher. And now, pick 103 was Michael Thomas.
Michael Thomas, obviously now, in terms of the more I've seen about Dynasty content on YouTube and reading fantasy blogs and stuff, it doesn't really seem like taking a wide receiver at the 103 is a very smart choice. And at the time, as the guy who had the 103, I actually had the 103 at 2 different times and traded it both times just because I didn't really want to start my draft off with a wide receiver, knowing how much depth there is at wide receiver compared to running back. I wanted a stud running back, but I also couldn't really see myself passing up on Michael Thomas at the 103. And the guy who eventually had the 103, Sam, took Michael Thomas very unsurprisingly. And to sing his praises, he was the wide receiver 1 in all formats, but especially in PPR, he just blew everyone out of the water. I mean, he was the only wide receiver to eclipse 1,400 yards. He set the all-time receptions record. Just an insane season from him.
Yeah, and to build off of Eryk's point, Thomas had, I think it was like a top 5 all-time receiving season. He was terrific, fantastic. A lot of people the biggest criticism of Michael Thomas from last season was the amount of short routes that he went. Nonetheless, he's unquestionably extremely gifted. I don't know how I don't know how possible it is for him to repeat what he did last season, especially consistently over the course of the next few years. But he's definitely wide receiver one in fantasy. And like Eryk said, the more we've thought about it, with the league's lack of running back depth, it does seem like someone like Ezekiel Elliott would have been the smarter 103 than Michael Thomas. Nonetheless, you can give who drafts him, Sam Gloss.
Sam.
You can't give him too much crap for taking him because Michael Thomas is just terrific. But yeah, I probably would have gone with Zeke there.
Yeah, and like when we were first starting this, I think Eryk and I had a conversation. We said that like with the 101 we would consider taking Michael Thomas because like that was when we first decided on Dynasty, and
that was like back in January.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it just seems common knowledge that wide receivers last longer, but like we said, running backs are more scarce. Now you don't want to do what Steven did at the 104, and man, okay, so I traded I think pick 20 and a pick in the 4th round for the 104, and right there I was planning on taking Zeke because I think it was pretty set in stone that whoever had the 103 was going to take Michael Thomas. Steven, I hit him up one day because he hadn't made any pre-draft trades. I was just like, I think I said as a joke, like, yo, would you send the 10th pick and the 19th pick for the 104? And he was just like, yeah, sure, why not? And so our group chat's just going crazy. Everybody's just making fun of Steven because, I mean, it's just not the best trade, especially when you consider, like, who I got there and compared to who he got. The 104, he did not take Devontae Adams. He did not take DeAndre Hopkins. He did not take Chris Godwin. He took Tyreek Hill. Now, I completely understand that Tyreek Hill is very elusive, very fast, one of the fastest to ever step on the field. But man, I mean, the value's just not there. I mean, speedsters do not last as long as the guys that are more technically refined. Like, so I would have if he was hellbent on a receiver here, I would have gone with Hopkins or Adams. But yeah, Tyreek Hill 104, just not the best.
Yeah, and you could even argue that Tyreek Hill's value's actually gone up since the day we drafted him. I mean, because we have a few people centered in Missouri, I was expecting Tyreek Hill to be gone in the 1st round, even if I didn't necessarily see the value there. And because of the Mahomes contract, he has that QB stability on his team. So perhaps his value goes up a little bit. And he's still pretty young, but like Alex said, speedsters depreciate in value a lot quicker than those big-bodied receivers who could just go up and catch touchdowns for a decade. And at the 104, I mean, that's the kind of picks you're going to have in Grand League sometimes, and you're just like, all right.
Yeah. Before I go on, who was the 5th pick again? I'm blanking out.
Zeke.
The 5th pick was Zeke, so I had those back-to-back picks at 105 and 106.
Right. And now to 105, Zeke slid to 105. Well, you could argue it was a slide. I would say it was. And with the 5th pick, Eric Jones himself took him, and I mean 105 for Zeke. Just I'd argue it's extremely great value, especially considering I would prefer him over the 2 guys taking the form. I mean, there's really no argument for Tyreek Hill in Dynasty over Zeke. Not a single season, not Dynasty. Tyreek Hill's terrific. He's fast. He's elusive. He winds up the field for Pat Mahomes. He's such a great deep threat, but I mean, I'd argue he's not a top 3 Dynasty receiver. Is agreeable to most, I feel like. But Zeke at 5th was terrific value. He had a bunch of options. He could have gone with Kamara. He could have gone with Zeke, which he did, obviously. And he could have gone with Dalvin Cook. But with the 5th pick, Zeke just gives him a lot of durability. He gives him a lot of talent, great catch passing Jesus Christ. Great catching ability. Uh, Zeke is going to be a stud for the foreseeable future as long as he stays healthy, which he's been.
Yep. And with the 106, Eryk Jones had back-to-back picks, and he ended up drafting Dalvin Cook. Now, I mean, when Eryk talks, I'll let him talk more about this, but I don't know if Dalvin Cook it would still be his 106 if he were to draft today, which, I mean, Dalvin Cook, not a bad pick here, as long as, well, the reason his handcuff was such a hot commodity is because we would always talk about him in the group chat, and Alexander Madison flew off the board like 2 or 3 rounds earlier than he should have. But Dalvin Cook has massive durability concerns. I mean, he's never stayed healthy for a full 16. I actually ended up trading Lamar Jackson midseason for Dalvin Cook, and at the time, everyone thought I was robbing Tom, but it ended up screwing up both of us. But yeah, 106, Dalvin Cook, he's still holding out. I mean, I haven't heard anything saying that he's going to play week 1, so I'm going to let Eryk talk more about this, actually.
Yeah, and I can talk about both my picks here. Zeke at the 105, as Yoav said, pretty unquestionable. Arguably should have gone at the 103. Unquestionably should have gone at the 104. I mean, he's a top 3 running back, the stability, and I mean, you talk about the game-breaking athleticism that Saquon and CMC have, but Zeke's not much further behind, and he has a significantly better offense around him. He's going to score 10 touchdowns at least, and 1,000 yards is not a question for him unless he goes down for an extended length of time. Moving on to the 106, my thinking at the time is I get the floor with Zeke, and I get the RB2, at least, which is where Dalvin was last season before his injury. I get that ceiling with Dalvin. If I could do it again, I think Kamara would definitely be the pick.
Yep,
the more I've thought about him,
that's what I was going to say, Kamara.
I don't think I factored in the high ankle sprain being as big a factor as it was. I mean, if you take out the high ankle sprain, Kamara is a top 4 running back in PPR every single year of his career. With Mark Ingram, without Mark Ingram, with Drew Brees, with Teddy Bridgewater. It doesn't matter who's on the Saints. It doesn't matter if Alvin Kamara is a workhorse back. He's going to get less than 20 touches a game. That's just how he is. But he's going to turn those 20 touches into insane production. And Dalvin Cook, yeah, he's probably going to be the workhorse if healthy. But Alvin Kamara can do more with less and does not come with those injury or contract issues that Dalvin Cook does.
Yeah,
I still took Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, so moving on to pick 107, the Hartford Hobos, who are owned by Eric West, took Aaron Jones. It was a very, very homer pick. Aaron Jones is a big Packers fan. He's loyal to them. He supports them. With due respect, the pick was not good, and there wasn't much of an argument for it there either, especially when you consider the guys who were available. If you consider there were Josh Jacobs, there was Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, etc., etc. I think Aaron Jones is a very good dynasty player, but there's probably, I would argue, 25 guys in dynasty better than him. But with all due respect to Eric West, not a good pick. Aaron Jones was RB2 last year. He had a great season, but he also, I think, had 19 touchdowns the entire year, catching and receiving and running. He's not going to repeat that. They got very lucky. Also, considering Aaron Jones's contract situation is coming up very shortly, there's still some uncertainty there, and I think he should have gone with Kamara.
Yeah, he definitely should have gone with Kamara. And I think the reason he took 107 is, I don't remember, I've never met Eric West, but I think he said that Aaron Jones had like 21 touchdowns last year or something like that. Like, yeah, I completely understand that Aaron Jones, since he's entered the NFL, has been the single best goal line back in the league, but I do not see a world where he does that again. I just don't think it's going to happen, like, at all by any means, especially since they took A.J. Dillon in the second round, which is just god-awful. So moving on to 108, the owner at the time took Alvin Kamara. And like Eryk said, all Alvin Kamara has done throughout his career is produce. He's produced on the ground, he's produced in the air, and I think over the past 3 seasons he's been in the league. So yeah, his entire career, he's caught around 80-ish passes. And I think
he's actually caught exactly 81 balls every single year of his career.
So
it's one of the coolest stats.
Yeah, so he's the KH, he's the Chris Davis of football. But yeah, 247 guaranteed. But yeah, the yardage just wasn't there in the receiving game last year. But I don't know. Like you said, he had a high ankle sprain, which definitely affected his elusiveness. One of the most elusive. He's just elusive. Like, that's just what he is. Like, there's nothing he does better than just making guys miss, just flat out.
Yeah, and making guys miss is how you get those yards. And it's fantasy, so we're all about the numbers, but you do have to look at what they're doing on the field, and the Saints just have the utmost confidence in Alvin Kamara. They had Mark Ingram, who was a very good running back for them, and they just let him walk because they knew what they had in Alvin Kamara. And I think if he's healthy this season, you'll see what he should have done last year, which is just be completely unleashed as the one-man wrecking crew out of the Saints' backfield. And speaking of one-man wrecking crews in the backfield, at the 109, Robbie took Derrick Henry, who's one of the hardest players, I think, to evaluate in Dynasty. Because, yeah, he is fairly young, and he did just ink that new contract extension for a boatload of money. But just something about Derrick Henry makes me feel a lot less excited about him than guys like Zeke, Kamara, CMC, Saquon, and even Dalvin Cook. It just doesn't seem like he's the kind of guy whose ceiling is to be the RB1 in fantasy.
Yeah. And to go off of what Eryk said, Derrick Henry is probably the hardest player in the league to tackle. And it was not a bad value pick. I think it was a little. I would have taken Jacobs over him, and I mean, you can't complain too much. Henry just got his contract extension. There's stability. He's durable, but we'll see how that plays out. And Alex took Clyde Edwards-Helaire, CH at 110. It was a great pick. I personally believed it was a little bit of a reach, but that's only because he's unproven. And I think at best case scenario, he's probably a top 5 asset in Dynasty, and he's going to eat in this Chiefs offense. Patrick Mahomes specifically asked Andy Reid to draft this guy. He told, what do you say, give me Clyde or something like that. He drafted him, and Clyde, especially now with Damian Williams opting out the season, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is probably going to tear it up this season. But he is unproven, and that's why I do call it a bit of a reach. But the value was not bad. He's going to fit right into that offense where I think he'll be used a lot.
Yeah. And to grab this was my own pick. And at the time, I was thinking, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is just going to absolutely destroy the league. Like Yoav said, Patrick Mahomes specifically asked Andy Reid to draft this guy. And yeah, I think at the time it was a bit of a reach, but he was my guy, and I have no regrets about this pick, especially now that Damian Williams opted out. I couldn't have foreseen that in May when I drafted this guy, but I mean, he's probably a first-round pick in season-long leagues now, just because Damian opted out. And I have no regrets.
That's what I was gonna say. In terms of the Damian Williams opt-out, my one concern, and I didn't have a pick in any range where I could have gotten CEH. I mean, I had the 105, the 106. I wasn't really considering him there, and my next pick was all the way in the third round. So I didn't really have any picks where I could have taken him. But if I did have a pick in that range, I think my one concern would have been that Damian Williams didn't come out of nowhere last year, but that Chiefs backfield was so loaded with running backs that they could use. And Damian Williams obviously had an amazing Super Bowl performance, but that's just a one-game sample size that he did amazing. So I wasn't really sure how they were going to use Damian and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, maybe a veteran running back they might bring in. But with the Damian Williams holdout and just observing the Chiefs running back depth chart now, it's going to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire's backfield, no question. And one of my favorite stats that I've heard from multiple people in the fantasy world is that when Patrick Mahomes is on the field, Chiefs running backs average like 1.7 touchdowns per game. And I don't see any reason why CEH shouldn't be getting at least 1.2 a game. And if that's the case, he's scoring 20 touchdowns on top of being a fantastic receiving back, getting the goal line work. It's an amazing pick now.
Yeah. And to move on to pick 111, the owner at the time drafted DeAndre Hopkins. Personally, I would have gone Chris Godwin here. I obviously drafted him myself, so I am a little bit biased, but I would have taken him there. Hopkins is now obviously played last season with Deshaun Watson and the Texans. Just traded to Arizona, where I think the situation is settled very, very well. He's unquestionably one of the 5 best receivers in the game of football. He's 27, right? Yeah, he's 27, and he's in his prime. He's terrific. One of my reasons that I would have gone Godwin here is because historically, superstar receivers don't always repeat. Like when superstar receivers are traded, they don't always repeat what they've done the previous years. It could work out. This could be another situation. He's in an offense where he's going to see a big workload, as he would probably anywhere. He's DeAndre Hopkins. He's great. But nonetheless, a very solid pick for the Ontario Arsonists.
Yeah, it is. I would consider this still a good pick. It's hard to pass up the value. I've seen him ranked as high as 5 in like 1QB Dynasty rankings. So there are a bit of concerns. Like Yoav said, the overwhelming majority of research from a superstar receiver going from one team to the next is overwhelmingly negative for the first year. And it's just a common sense thing. They have to learn a new system. They have to learn a new offense. They don't have chemistry with the quarterback. And also, I think from week 9 onward, when Arizona got Kenyon Drake, Kyler Murray averaged something like the 27th most pass attempts per game. So it is very clear that Arizona wants to run the football. It is very clear that Cliff Kingsbury, who has just been touted as this passing god, just wants Kenyon Drake, Chase Edmonds, and potentially even Eno Benjamin. They took him in the 7th round, so maybe not, to be a part of their game plan. But yeah, DeAndre Hopkins, 111.
Yeah, and to wrap up the DeAndre Hopkins conversation, obviously a PPR god, he could be the wide receiver 1. There is upside there on Arizona's offense. As Alex said, they are probably going to try to be a little bit more run heavy than they were in the beginning of the season. But we really don't know what to expect out of Arizona, because when they traded for Kenyon Drake last year, Kenyon Drake was their best player. But now they traded for DeAndre Hopkins, so maybe they want more of the workload to flow through him. Maybe not. And as someone who actually did trade for DeAndre Hopkins later and then trade him again, there's so much uncertainty there. And again, the stability with Chris Godwin and the 2 years of youth that Godwin has on Hopkins could lead to someone preferring Godwin over Hopkins. My pick personally would have been neither of the two, and I probably would have gone with Josh Jacobs, who was actually selected at 112. I know Yoav said when he had the 105, he was considering Jacobs, and Yoav probably would have really liked to get Jacobs at the 113. But Andres had a great pick here. Jacobs, second-year player, ton of youth, big workload, and I think Yoav probably wants to talk even more about Jacobs.
I love Jacobs. At the beginning of once we decided that we were going to do a dynasty league, we had gotten back from school for quarantine. We spent all of our time doing fantasy research, thinking fantasy, trading picks. I did more research. I love this guy. The eye test. he checks off all the boxes on the eye test. The more I've thought about it over time, I would have him as probably RB5 in Dynasty after Zeke and Kamara. But I think this is a terrific pick with the 12 overall. Jacobs, I'd say he's a bit of a poor man's version of Zeke, and he's obviously not a poor man's player. He's a franchise cornerstones running back. I mean, they spent so much money on the O line in Oakland, in Vegas now. Excuse me. He has no competition in the backfields. Jalen Richard is not seeing the field as long as Jacobs is healthy. Jacobs did miss a bit of time last year, which is a bit of a concern considering he was a rookie. But I mean, guys get hurt. It's football. It's not like he's a historically injury-prone player. Great pass catching ability, great runner, and I thought the value was great. And I had 113, so I was crossing my fingers. I'm sure they remember my reaction to when Jacobs was, but it was a great value pick.
Yeah, and just to grab this, I know everybody in the AFC West knows that the Raiders have a great offensive line, and it is very clear that John Gruden wants Josh Jacobs to be a huge part of this team and this offense, which is looking to be much improved with all the weapons they've added. So at the 113, Yoav actually again took Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin, I mean, I'm not going to say he came out of nowhere because all we heard last offseason was Bruce Arians saying, yes, we want Chris Godwin to be a part of our team, like a huge part of our game plan. And while Mike Evans was the wide receiver 1 in Tampa, Chris Godwin took almost no time to supplant him. I mean, Chris Godwin last year in PPR finished as the wide receiver 2. I know he cooled off a little bit towards the end of the year, but, natural regression, that's just going to happen. But yeah, Chris Godwin at 113, I still think it's a pretty good pick. I mean, to be honest, all the wide receivers after Michael Thomas could be interchangeable. So I think Yoav specifically said he got his wide receiver 2 here. And I'm very interested to see how Chris Godwin performs with Brady. Because, I mean, we just had Jameis who was fuck it and chuck it. I'm pretty sure that did wonders for his receivers and their fantasy stats. And yeah, so Chris Godwin, 113.
Yeah, and again, the one reason I'm opposed to Chris Godwin, and I have my nitpicky issues with every single wide receiver except for Michael Thomas, basically. And it's why they're all interchangeable, because they all have different risks and rewards associated with them. And yeah, Godwin, the wide receiver 2 last year, a fantastic season. But potentially something that could hurt his fantasy value is the fact that he's getting rid of Jameis Winston. Obviously, the Bucks getting Brady is a huge dub for them. Brady is going to be fantastic in terms of helping them win ball games, actually. He's not going to be throwing, I'm a huge Patriots fan, huge Brady fan. Excuse the Tennessee game. He's not going to be throwing pick sixes to end the season like Jameis Winston, although Brady obviously did in his last game as a Patriot, but we can move past that. Brady, very cerebral. He's going to make the right decision. And maybe Godwin doesn't have the same amount of targets because Jameis Winston's not there throwing the ball 40 times a game. But Chris Godwin, in my opinion, is basically just a better Julian Edelman. And we saw how much Tom Brady loved Julian Edelman. I mean, Chris Godwin is bigger. He's faster. He has better hands than Edelman. And once he and Brady develop that repertoire, I think he does have the potential to repeat as wide receiver 2, maybe even wide receiver 1, depending on how Michael Thomas does. So not a bad pick by any means. And unlike Hopkins, Thomas, and Adams, Chris Godwin is still on that sort of upward trend. He's only 24. I think it's going to be his age 25 season, so he's still entering his prime. He's not necessarily there yet.
Yeah, he'll be 24 the whole season. I'm very high on Godwin. I go to Penn State. He went to Penn State. There was the slightest bit of bias. The only guy that was his competition for that pick was Joe Mixon, which it was almost a 50-50 toss-up for me. But anyways, to move on to the next pick, this was the last pick of the first round, 114. Kevin Boley, the owner of the Quantity Blaze, took Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is a terrific talent, but obviously the biggest knock that everyone would agree on is that he shares a backfield with Kareem Hunt, who a lot of us would agree that Kareem Hunt will probably will not be in Cleveland past this upcoming football season. But if he weren't, I do believe Nick Chubb is. If Kareem Hunt wasn't there, I do believe Nick Chubb is right up there with the Josh Jacobs of the world, Alvin Kamara and Zeke and those guys. He's a threat to take it down the field every time he touches the football. He's a big guy. This was his second or third. No, this was his first or second season. Second. And I think it was a terrific pick. I'm very high on Nick Chubb. And if Kareem Hunt does leave after the season, down the road, if Nick Chubb can stay healthy, I think this is a great pick.
Yeah, and like Yoav said, like Kareem Hunt not there. I mean, 2021 rushing champion Nick Chubb, sure. But Kareem Hunt, I mean, his rookie season, he came into the NFL. He caught 53 passes, scored, I think, 11 touchdowns, and just did work in the receiving game. So in PPR, Nick Chubb is probably, I mean, just a smidge below like all the guys that were taken ahead of him. But yeah, I mean, they improved their offensive line by drafting Jedrick Wills in the first, and they hired Kevin Stefanski too. So they want to be a run-heavy offense. Stefanski, obviously, the offensive coordinator from Minnesota, when they just went crazy this year. And yeah.
Yeah, again, Stefanski should be great for that offense compared to the trash can of a coach that was Freddie Kitchens. I mean, no one took a step forward in that offense other than, I guess you could argue, Jarvis Landry, but Jarvis Landry's been doing that for years in the league. I think it's one of the hardest things to quantify in terms of fantasy is that difference between Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt and the production levels they're going to have in this Cleveland offense. I mean, as Alex said, Nick Chubb has the skill to be the rushing leader in the NFL. Kareem Hunt's already done it. So you have these two absolute beasts in the Cleveland backfield. And yeah, Nick Chubb's probably better, but I have no idea how Cleveland wants to use the two of them, whether it's in a committee, whether Kareem Hunt's going to be the receiving back, but Nick Chubb's also a really good receiver out of the backfield. It's just there's so many questions for me in 2020, and I think both of them should be fantastic down the road. But it's really there's too many question marks for me to love Nick Chubb over guys still available like Miles Sanders and Joe Mixon, who have no backfield competition.
Yeah, I mean the two biggest. Oh, that's right, Miles Sanders. The two biggest competitors that Nick Chubb would have had for that spot would have been. I mean, now that we've all talked ourselves into how much we love Miles Sanders, it probably would have been Sanders or Mixon. But I mean, Nick Chubb this is probably around where he belongs. You can't go wrong with it. But I mean, if Kareem Hunt isn't there, Chubb is probably somewhere around like the 7th pick of the draft. Unfortunately, though, for Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt is there. So until further notice, I'd say it's about where he belongs.
Yeah. So anyways, guys, I think that'll do it for the video. And there is a chance that this becomes completely obsolete because if the NFL season does not happen, there's a chance that we end up redrafting because we all drafted in May with the fact in mind, or at least with the assumption that the 2020 NFL season would happen. So if we make it to week 5 and get canceled, I have no idea what the league is going to do. We'll keep y'all updated. Anyways, that's going to do it for the video. Follow me on Twitter, follow Eryk on Twitter, follow Yoav on Twitter. Their links will be up there or in the description below. Anyways, guys, have a good day and peace out.
I can never ever find the right words, and there's no way this is real life. There's no telling you're the right girl, so I can only say that it feels right. It feels right, it feels right. Yeah, I can only say that it feels right.